Okay, let's get started with today's agenda. We will start with a brief introduction of Optimum Networking for those of you who may not be familiar with us. Next, we will introduce two special guests who help companies we'll actually introduce cybersecurity, cyber liability insurance, and we'll just talk about that a little bit. We're not experts at that, but we do know experts on that, and it's a critical part of the overall plan. Then at that stage, I want to hear from you. So the folks that are on the call right now, what worries that you have, what concerns do you have, what types of things keep you up at night around cyber security? I know Nicole, who was on early, already started talking about stuff like that. So we want to hear from you and some of the things that are concerning you. Once we've established this, I will share some information that will help raise your awareness about the level of cyber threat that's out there and that it can seriously impact your business. Last, and the part that you're all waiting for, is two of our expert engineers will discuss what Optimum Networking is doing to keep ourselves and our clients safe and secure and answer any questions that you may have at that point. So we understand that some of you may or may not have more or less experience about this. So please ask any questions. It doesn't matter how complex you feel they are or how basic they are. And so please share those with us, any questions at all. So let's go ahead and move forward. So Optimum Networking, a bit about Optimum Networking. We were founded in 1995. And so if you do the math, that means last year was our 25th anniversary. This year, we're turning 26. So we're very excited about that. For the length of time we've been in business, we've seen quite a bit in that time. Our mission is we exist to help our clients leverage technology for their success, essentially helping people succeed with technology. So how we protect our clients from cyber threats is a great example of how we really execute, deliver on this mission and this promise. Our services include supporting our users through our support desk and on-site engineers. We maintain our clients' networks and servers and backups. We provide strong, comprehensive cybersecurity, quite obviously, and we also guide our clients through IT strategy and planning. So any questions about Optimum Networking up front before we get started? Okay, great. Let's go forward. So I mentioned cyber liability, cyber insurance. That is a critical part of the picture. Sometimes I'll have an expert on the call. This month we do not, but I highly recommend, if you're not aware of, or if you don't know what type of cyber liability insurance you have, ask me, talk to me, and I'll get you in touch with an expert, and or whoever you are using for your business insurance liability products. Make sure there's a cyber liability component to that. And if you have questions about that, or if you're not clear or you're not confident about your insurance carrier's expertise in that area, once again, please ask me, because I can get you in touch with an expert on that. So now it's our chance to hear from you, as I mentioned. I'm going to read through these questions. I'd like you to think of some examples, some things you may have experienced, especially since you and your employees, many of them have often transferred to working from home. So, and this is the participatory part, so don't leave me hanging or I might have to call on you. So first, let's talk about it. Have you or your company experienced a cyber breach? And if so, what was the impact on the company? What is your perception of the cyber threats out there? Who do you think the bad guys are and what do you think they look like? How confident are you in your current cybersecurity measures for your company? If you are supported by a managed service provider, either Optimum or otherwise, how confident are you that how confident are you in their security measures for themselves? What concerns you most about a cyber breach? Are you aware of national or international regulations that your company or industries are bound to, for example, like HIPAA or GDPR or SOC or these types of things? And last but not least, what do you consider an effective backup strategy? So I'm going to ask the folks that are on to kind of share or answer these questions for us.
Okay, I just started queuing, so I can start.
Thanks.
Of course. So the very first one is actually interesting because very shortly after I started working here, I get an email that was supposedly from the owner. And if I would read that email on my computer, I would see it was sketchy. But since I was kind of on a run, running errands, I read it on my watch and on my phone. And naive as I was, my boss asking me to do something right away. I did it right away. And not very smartly, I went to the store, I bought a gift card he asked me to buy. And, I sent him the barcodes, I sent him the codes. And yeah, that it was not great. And after that happened, we were able to stop one of them from being used, but it was a total of four. So the three of them actually went through. So obviously we lost money because of that. And and obviously I reported it, like there wasn't much we could do, but I reported it to the police and we tried to figure it out. And we found interesting thing. The email, the domain that it came from was very typical, kind of like a Google style famous domain in Czech Republic, where I'm originally from. So we were immediately like, was this targeted as I was a new employee, as they somehow knew where I was from? And till this day,
Mhm.
we don't really know because we were able to figure it out. Um, but yeah, that was a great thing that happened. And
Yeah,
obviously
that's
the impact wasn't like horrendous, but it was not
no, it's
great.
still an impact, and you still feel, violated to be sure. And Nicole, don't beat yourself up too
Exactly.
much about it because that happens to anybody and everybody. Um, and it is very, they get very tricky, as you'll see in part of this presentation. But there's a word for it. It's called spoofing, and we'll talk a little bit more in depth about that. So, but I appreciate you sharing with us and letting you know that that happened to you. It's because again, it's so much is about awareness. So, somebody else,
Yeah.
please. Paul, I know that you guys had quite a scare a while back before you started working with Optimum.
Correct. We, we've always had, because we're in a community firm, so we always had, very confidential information. So we try to be very aware of what's going on. We have an employee that was working from home. They're, I feel, whatever they're using,
Paul, we're having a little difficult time hearing you, but I do know that you guys did experience a breach. You did call a company that was specific about cybersecurity to help mitigate that. And one of the things they recommended was a strong uh, managed service provider that provided the sort of day in, day out structure of IT support. Uh,
Yes.
oh, now we hear you much better. Go ahead. Can you talk now?
Yes. Sorry. Yeah, I had some computer problems. But that's correct. We had an employee that was working from home, and her computer or internet at home got compromised. So obviously we were like, no, we got to take this seriously, because we've always only had like emails, as the person prior to me just mentioned, just fraudulent emails. So we've always tried to keep employees aware of those. But then when we had a breach of an employee, computer with confidential information, we were like, nah, we got to take this thing more serious. And that's when we reached out to you guys. And this is an ongoing thing because what we've learned, these guys get more and more sophisticated with their attacks. So we try to stay up things, and you work with you guys. Anything that we see that comes in that's suspicious, we immediately alert you guys so that you guys are aware of it, and so they can get those things blocked. So right now I'm more confident, but obviously we're always learning and hoping to get better.
Absolutely, and we appreciate you being here for that reason. Mike, I know that you're sort of in a dispersed, not quite startup, but growing area. You and I just recently started talking, but so I don't know if you have much history about this, but I know you have some concerns.
Well, we definitely, yeah, I don't have a whole lot of history in this, but the product that we're putting to market is in the financial services space. I know security is a top priority for that industry. I've seen it firsthand, having worked at banks, and we actually have kind of a security expert that we've been in contact with. He's an outside consultant who has shown a couple of he's done a couple of webinars, I should say, that I participated in that were very eye-opening on how easy it is for perpetrators to get in and take over devices and to take over. He shared a lot of horror stories where he was because he's hired by companies all over the place, small and large, to do consulting type work and to find vulnerabilities and help offer solutions to plug them and that sort of thing. And he's got every cybersecurity certification under the sun. He even shared a quick story with us one time where he was hired by a place. He ended up going outside by the smokers and befriended the smokers, and walked in with one of them because he's like, I forgot my badge. Walked in, was able to find an open network port that he plugged in a little device into the network jack, and then left the building and was able to get into their network and get right into the CEO's email, and then went into his office and said, yeah, that didn't take me very long. I've gained access to your entire network. And so, I mean, he has stories like that I personally have not had the experience, but so I know how important and how easy some of this stuff is.
Absolutely. That brings to mind a story from Optimum around here. We had one of our engineers. We have one of our clients is an assisted living facility, and you know how sometimes there's several of them in one area. He went to the wrong one, not our client, but another one. Walked up to the front desk and said, I'm here to work on your server. And they said, sure, here you go. And he went down, it was his first time at that location. He went down to the server room, and it wasn't until he got in, we realized he was in the wrong place. So had he been, this was that's another level of security, right? But, had he been nefarious, all those records would have been his, right? Obviously that didn't happen, but that level of security and that awareness is what we're talking about. So that's crazy stuff, but it happens. So it's a good segue. So let's start talking about cybersecurity awareness. So to get started, I wanted to take a brief trip back to yesteryear, where pirates terrorized the high seas. These criminals have been romanticized in recent decades, but back in the day they were pretty scary. In reality, they established well-organized business model that leveraged aggressive marketing and branding to ensure that they could steal as much booty as they could at the lowest possible cost. This included finding ways that they could have folks surrender the riches without fighting and promise for the promise that they would not fight, and if they did fight, they would regret it. So, in other words, the Royal Navy, they were less worried about the Royal Navy, and they were more concerned that these folks would actually adequately defend themselves. So that's the way it was. How is it now? Not much has changed, I'm afraid. Now, maybe the bad guys aren't quite as exciting. We don't really know because we can't see them in most cases. But what we do know is that they are also very well organized, dangerous, and they are very good at what they do. The similarities are quite frightening. These folks know that for the most part, the authorities don't have the resources to crack down on them, so that they are operating with near impunity. The one way to protect yourself is to increase the awareness and to have the best tools and systems available and in place. So bottom line, you don't want to be a soft target for these folks. So here are the realities. Some of the best in the business make it a full-time job, not just to execute cyber attacks, right? But they actually create software for others, less talented folks, to do the same type of attacks. They utilize what is called the dark web to communicate and to run their businesses. So what is the dark web? I'll let the engineers talk about it more on a technical side, but basically what it is a network of servers that requires a special browser that is encrypted and keeps you anonymous and untrackable. So, but keep in mind, this dark web, this is big business. They have created a real community. They've created an entire economy. And on top of talented developers, these folks have marketing departments, if you can believe it, financing, and this is the one that gets me the most. They have customer service reps. So what would a customer service rep do, right? Well, if you have heard of this thing called ransomware, once they put the ransom on encrypted files, who do you think helps the customer, or I would say victim, access the documents once the ransom is paid? That's these customer service reps. And I actually heard somebody say, hey, yeah, as soon as I paid the ransom, I got my files back right away. The customer service was great. I'm not kidding you that he actually said that. It just basically makes me sick. So keep in mind, though, people ask.
That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy? So keep in mind, these folks actually police each other. So people say, well, they're criminals. If I pay the ransom, why would they pay me? Why would they give me my data back? They're just criminals. They just want my money. No, they want to continue this as a business so that if people aren't paying the ransom, they turn on each other and say, no, you better pay the ransom. Otherwise, we can't, conduct business this way. So yeah, it's pretty crazy stuff out there. So to give you an example, this is something that was pulled off the dark web. And this is an example of what I was saying before, which is there are developers that are helping other people access ways to attack other companies. So you've heard of things like software as a service or security as a service, hardware as a service. This is crime as a service. I don't know a better way to put it. And this is an example also, so you can see the cost of it, as low as $2 per user. And as many users as you want to attack, exchange rates, Bitcoin. This is marketing. This is a nice looking site, to be sure. And look at the highlighted box here. This is essentially how you pay for it. So this is really showing the financial side of things. So this should get you a bit of a wake up call as to see the dangers that are out there. So I'm going to move forward with introducing our experts today, so we can hopefully allay some of these fears that I may have just created for a lot of folks, and really move forward for the presentation there. I am going to introduce Brett Ammerman, who's one of our owners and is our Chief Technical and Security Officer. Brett has over 30 years of industry experience and has a dedicated role to focus on Optimum Networking's comprehensive cybersecurity. Bill Townsend works with both the sales and the project teams. Bill has over 30 years of IT industry experience and has a strong backworking in networking and cybersecurity. So Brett and Bill are on the call today, and now I'll let you introduce yourselves, gentlemen. Brett, you want to go ahead and start?
Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. I hope lunch is good for you. And I appreciate you guys joining our meeting this afternoon. I'd like to introduce myself as somebody just like you, because I am really just like you, except for a little bit of my expert skills. I grew up in northern Indiana, graduated from Purdue, and actually my degree was in forestry management. Don't ask me how I got to IT, but I'm saving one tree at a time by making us a more paperless society. After I graduated, I moved to Alaska and started my family up there and started building and selling computers out of my basement. It's funny because my kids knew the UPS man by his first name, that's how much volume I was doing. That's where I started my entrepreneurial side of computers. We moved to Colorado in 1991, and then I started working for CH2M Hill, which is was a large engineering firm. They've been acquired now. I was there for 18 years. We did a lot of neat things, and it let me get even better at my craft. And that's where Bill and I met, was at CH as well. And the founders, Joe and Tracy, who started Optimum Networking, worked at CH2M Hill when I started there. And I like to tell the story that neither one of them had kids, and I had 4, and they wanted to start this company, and I thought, I got to feed those mouths, and so they took off and started it, and here we are 25, almost 26 years later, and it's just been fantastic. I started with Optimum in 2013 and started in the technology side of things, just making sure that we were doing all the right things technologically. And in the last couple of years, I've taken my course and now pushed it over to security, just because it has become a firestorm out there with all of the bad actors that are dealing in big business, as Jonathan liked to say. We're trying to do the best to protect all of our clients from those kinds of situations. So
Excellent.
thanks
And we'll
again.
go into a little more detail about that soon, Brett. I appreciate that. Bill, can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. I don't think as long as I've known Brett, I don't think I ever knew that he started out playing in the forestry industry. So I learned something new today. That means I can go home. Oh, wait, I'm already working from home. So maybe I just leave my home office. Unlike Brett, I've always been playing in computers. I've got 31 years now in the IT industry, and I've had the opportunity to play in a lot of different spaces, up to and including the security industry. So as Jonathan said, I work on both the pre-sale side, solutions architecture, as well as on the pro services side. Some of you I've met in person, some just via meetings like this, but hopefully we get to do some more things with you. And I'll be short and brief so we can move on to the meat of the presentation.
Well, thank you, Bill. And the next level is what to really discuss about what Optimum is doing to protect itself. I'll have Brett discuss this in a minute, but keep in mind that this may sound obvious to you, but if your managed service provider is not secure, you are certainly not secure. We have earned many clients over the past several years where their managed service company was breached, and then they got to them through them. So oftentimes it's not a direct attack, it is through a vendor, and through a managed service or an IT vendor, it's even that more critical or dangerous. So I wanted to set everybody's mind at ease specifically about what we are doing to protect ourselves. So Brett, can you discuss a little bit about what we're doing to protect Optimum networking?
You bet, Jonathan. Thank you. And as points out here, you really are looking for somebody who's strong and well established. We've got a really crackerjack staff of folks that have been in the industry. As Bill talked about, 30 plus years. Joe and Tracy and I have all been in much longer than that. I'm a little older than Bill at this point, if you couldn't tell. But we've been doing this for a long time. And generally what we see for our competition is smaller organizations that have 1 to 5 individuals who are trying to put together something with shoestrings and chewing gum. And we've been there, done that, bought several t-shirts, and every tool that we use requires multi-factor authentication, and we can go into that later. But basically, you got to have a username, a password, and then something else that you know. And so it's not just a username and password, because that can be easily cracked over time. And that's what the bad actors have, is nothing but time. So I think it's important that you make sure that somebody who's doing this job for you has been there and done that and has flesh wounds or scars to prove it. So
very good, Brett. Yeah, and keep that in mind. Not all managed service providers are created equal, and this is certainly a differentiation point that you'll want to make sure is critical. So Bill, can you start talking a little bit high level about the layered approach that we use, and then we'll drill down into each one of these.
Sure. So one of the things that you see here is there's kind of 5 layers, if you will. And when you think about security, it's not a magic bullet or a panacea for one thing fixes all things. So we practice what we preach, kind of like what Brett was saying, and we make sure that we do a layered approach on these various things. And there's no one piece that's more important than the other, because if you're not doing all of them, you're leaving yourself vulnerable.
Sort of like the weakest link, right?
Exactly. Except you don't have Jane Lynch telling you who you are.
Very good. So Brett, let's start with backups. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
There's 3 basic laws of backup. And you've got to at least have backups. And a lot of folks think they're safe because they're using a tool like Google or OneDrive for Business, or it's in AWS. And so, but if they're not backing it up, something could happen to it, and then it could all be going in a flash. The second rule is you got to make sure that you're replicating your backup off-site. We like to have a local backup, a copy of your backup, so that if something bad happens to a lot of data, we don't have to wait for it to come back down through the internet and into your location. And then the third thing is to make sure that you got somebody monitoring your backups and testing them. And we have all three of those in spades. Every one of our clients is backed up. If we have a client approach us that says they don't want backups, then they're not going to be one of our clients. Not only do we replicate our backups off-site, but we also send them to a second data center. So we actually end up with data in 3 locations. And then we are monitoring backups, and we're testing backups as part of our managed service plan. So if you're not doing these three things, you aren't backed up.
Exactly. And Brett, how it relates to cybersecurity on a couple levels. One, the backups need to be secure because you don't want people to, penetrate your backups and get information that way. And secondly, in the case of ransomware, if you're properly backed up, you don't have to pay it, correct?
Absolutely correct. Yeah, that's the biggest thing is we make sure that we're able to restore that data without having to pay the bad actors. And that's been our watchword is we don't want to pay anybody any money that they're not due. We like to sleep at night, so we like our customers to be able to sleep at night and know that their data is safe.
Very good, thank you. So Bill, can you tell us a little bit more about firewalls in particular and why they are so necessary, but how they're also not solving all the problems that people thought so in the past? Bill, are you on mute?
Yeah, sorry, I just put myself on mute and started talking. I thought I was on mute and taking myself off.
There you go.
Anyway, so what you see on this slide is we talk about external protection and next gen or next generation firewalls. So when you think about traditional office spaces, especially pre-COVID, everybody was in an office space. You were on a corporate network. You had all of your peers around you. And a lot of times you had your servers and your files and everything there in the same building with you. So you would have to have something that was kind of protecting the borders to protect you from outside actors getting into your environment. That's what these next gen firewalls do, is they actually look at traffic coming in towards your network from anywhere around the world. So as a result, with these firewalls, we can use what's called geo-IP blocking or geographic IP blocking. And so that means if you're not doing business with China, why do you want IP addresses from China knocking on your door? Why do you want them trying to come into your environment if you have no business in those areas? So those are great things about the next generation firewalls. In addition, they can look for the web content that you're browsing to from your computers and inspect it in real time to make sure there's no malicious software trying to come back in a malformed response from those websites, or they're not trying to drop software onto your computer as you're browsing those sites and things of that nature. So that helps to prevent the viruses and the malicious software from getting on your computer. But even still, you've got, as Jonathan said, bad guys out there with nothing but time on their hands. They're looking for new ways to develop a new product or a new, service, if you will, for their bad guy customers to drop malicious software onto your computer. So they're looking for ways to circumvent these particular devices. So that's why you can't protect everything and you can't scan for everything. And now that we're in this, post-pandemic world, much like myself working from home, you have employees who work from home. So these enterprise next-gen firewalls in offices don't protect me in my home office unless I have comparable equipment in my house.
Right, and so that's a good segue into the next area, which is what we do to help what we're calling the internal protection or more on the desktop side. Brett, can you talk a little bit more about this?
You bet. So we actually use several layers of protection, and that includes antivirus. We're a big WebRoot proponent. They're a local company here in Colorado, but they are global. One nice thing about WebRoot is they're technology on the back end touches every IP address on the internet 3 times a day. So they have that reputation filtering down, and they know when an IP address or a website has been compromised, and they keep you safe. We also use DNS protection, not only at the next-gen firewall level that Bill's referring to, but we layer that into the antivirus product as well, so that if you're not in the office, you can feel safe that you're not going to go to a bad website because we're taken care of there. We also use another tool for advanced malware protection that looks more for artifacts of bad code that could be layered onto your computer that's zero-day event that not all web or antivirus can find. The malware, advanced malware, finds it and it alerts us right away, and we've got a P1 ticket every time we get one of those to get it cleaned up before it actually does anything. We leverage multi-factor authentication. Again, if you think about smartphones and how you get into your banking system, sometimes they'll ask you to send you a 6-digit code. We use a tool called Duo for the bulk of our customers, where it actually pops up and it says, hey, was this you trying to log in at this location? And you get a green or a red button. If you don't want somebody bad to get in, you press the red button. And then we do a ton of internal monitoring just to make sure that we're keeping those bad guys at bay. And that includes looking at authentications from outside of the U.S. For Office 365. So if you're not traveling and we see something coming in, we've got the ability to make some changes right there. All of these things work really well as far as being able to protect your remote employees, especially in these times.
Great, Brett. Thank you. And you can cover all these bases, but we all know what potentially is the final weakest link, as Bill likes to say, and that's actually the user. So, Bill, can you tell us a little bit how we help with the human element?
Absolutely. So, one of the things that I think it was Mike said earlier, the gentleman who specializes in security, kind of went and hung out with all the smokers and walked back in with them, and oops, I forgot my badge at my desk. You guys mind if I, grab onto your coattails and walk in with you? The human factor, the human element typically is the weakest link, because we as people want to believe that other people are naturally good. But unfortunately, there are bad guys out there, and they are looking to take advantage of good-natured people. So if you don't have user training, then that's the one place where they're going to be, where you as a company will be exploited, is through your employees not knowing how to identify or how to respond to these types of events. So, even though I said there's no one layer that's, more important than the others, if I were to weight them, I would probably say user training has a little bit more weight than some of the others, because again, we do want to believe that people are good. So some of the things that we do is that training aspect as part of our security as a service offering. So we will send you emails that look like they're coming from Amazon. So think about once we're in the holiday season, when everybody is ordering all of their gifts for the holidays, and you get those little notices that says, click here, track your package to see when it's going to be delivered to your home. Well, sometimes those aren't legitimate emails. They look like they're UPS, they look like they're Amazon, but they really take you to a fictitious site, drop malware in your computer, and then redirect you out to Amazon, the legitimate Amazon, that goes, oops, we can't find your package. Please log in to get more details. Things of that nature. So the tools that we use give real-time feedback when you click on those links, so that it helps you to identify what the Amazon logo looks like and how to see the difference, or a UPS logo that's slightly different, or I forget who it was earlier that said the email address, the domain name was a little bit off, but you can't necessarily see that unless you're looking for it. And here's a good real world experience. We had a customer that came to us where somebody created a vanity domain, something that looked very similar to their actual domain name, and they started impersonating them, sending out email addresses because they had captured a signature that looked from a legitimate email, and they started impersonating them on the web. And because somebody didn't know that there was an extra letter in the name for the email address, those people who received them from the vanity domain didn't realize that they were being, hacked by this external party. So they thought they were doing legitimate business with the legitimate company because they didn't see that one little extra character in our domain name. So these are areas where we can help with that training, with compliance reporting, with periodic, these periodic phishing attempts to get your employees to click on these bad emails, and then, give them a instant feedback and a training through the tools that we use.
Great, Bill. Thank you. And it's always good to know that you have a team behind you so that your employees aren't having to face these issues or questions alone. Last but absolutely not least, we're talking about the policy level. This relates to the human elements, but this is putting processes and procedures together to really tighten the reins. So Brett, can you tell us a little about how we can help folks in these areas?
Certainly. I think it goes to what Bill was talking about. If you're doing that security awareness training, you're starting to set your policies. We've got several financial organizations that are bound by the SEC, and they're required to have those security awareness training. And so it becomes part of their policy to have that. And so they have to have evidence that people passed at a certain level. And if they don't, then they got to go back and retake those tests and review that security. That proactive approach really makes a big difference for a lot of our organizations. And so we highly advise that folks go that direction early on. To go along with that are password policies, making sure that people are changing their passwords on a regular basis, that they are complex and a certain number of characters. Password phrases are all the rage now, so that it's not a single word that you've come up with where you've changed characters to numbers or special letters. It's more, hey, my dog ate my homework, and spell that out with spaces in it and put a capital letter in it here or there and then put an exclamation point at the end. That's infinitely more difficult for the bad actors to come up with an algorithm that'll crack that. And then acceptable use. What do your employees get to do while they're on your time? Are they able to go to NFL.com or Facebook or LinkedIn? And what social media are you allowing them to have access to? Is this timesheet fraud, or are they actually doing work when they're doing those kinds of things? And then what kind of network access do you allow into your environment? Are you screening computers before they connect to the network to make sure that they have up-to-date patching, that they have antivirus on there, and those kinds of things? Or are you excluding them completely from your network and cordoning them off to put them someplace else? And then mobile devices. If you're allowing your employees to access at the very minimum, your email system, you should be requiring at least a PIN to get into them. That way, if they drop their phone someplace at the airport or somebody steals it, they can't get in and get access to that data. Or are you requiring encryption on the device so that it can't be hacked, even if it's not accessible via the PIN? Email protection, we, by default, for all of our security as a service customers, will enable the managed security policy framework to help prevent spam and spear phishing and spoofing. Most small companies have no idea what they don't know, and the SPF records are very easy to implement, and they make a big difference as far as your posture and what you will accept and not accept on the internet. And then we also offer audit assistance around compliance, just to make sure you guys aren't hanging out there in the wind trying to answer questions about IT that you have no idea what their auditors are actually asking. We can back you up on all of that and make a difference for you.
Very good, Brett. Thank you so much. So I'm going to do a quick conclusion here, but I want to leave time for questions for all of you. Overreaching cybercrime awareness is the key. This is what we were talking about, how the end user is the weakest link. So therefore, the more aware they are, again, think about it in regular crime. If you are unaware in a dangerous part of the country or world or the city, and you don't know what threats are out there, you are a much more vulnerable open target than somebody who just knows to lock their car door or to be aware of their surroundings. It's the same in the cybercrime world, that the more aware you are, you're a much harder target for people to take advantage of. The multi-level approach is critical. Again, if you're not with Optimum Networking or you're considering other providers, ask them how many layers are to your security. They may say, oh, well, you're okay. We have antivirus. Oh, yeah, you're okay. You have a firewall. Oh, yeah, you're okay. You've got some level of password protection. Well, no, just one of those things is not sufficient. And not only does it have to be multi-layered, but each has to build on the other and be integrated, which is what we do here at Optimum Networking. And last but not least, I'm surrounded by engineers all the time, and if I don't talk about backups enough times, they'll whack me upside the back of my head. So I'm going to say it 3 times: backup, backup, backup. If you're not being backed up, you are not secure, and you're not really should be sleeping at night as a business owner or manager of a business. Backups are critical, and that's how critical we take them here at Optimum Networking. This is a link to some more resources, to be sure, and I may add even some as I send this deck out to all the participants, so you can take a little bit deeper look at that. Before we go to questions, I do want to ask people to save the date. We do have in February coming up another workshop. This one's called the Microsoft 365 Productivity Workshop, and I typically have these on Thursdays, but our representative that will be running that is not available that particular Thursday. So for once, it's going to be on a Friday, and I'll send an invite to everybody on the call if you haven't already been to that. This one is really helping people stay productive, even in dispersed environments. And many people have Microsoft 365, but they're just not using it to its best capacity. Other folks may be on other systems and other platforms, or having multiple platforms that don't necessarily talk to each other and aren't integrated. So this is a really good opportunity. This is a demo. It's a show and tell, and it's also an opportunity to ask a lot of questions and say, hey, can I do this? Or hey, I didn't know I could do that, with the tools that you may even already have. So feel free to register for that. I'll be sending out the invites for that shortly after this presentation. So now we have a few more. We have several minutes, and you have the opportunity to ask our experts any questions that you may have or that this presentation may have raised for you. So go ahead and I'll add. We have 2 of our account managers on the call too that work here at Optimum Networking, Nancy and April. So you guys feel free to ask questions too if you'd like.
Maybe I'll start us off. So this is Mike Lewis. So I've got a virtual team that are spread out throughout the country, startup company, and are looking to get better organized as we take our product to market and have some revenue coming in the door. But curious to know how you handle like a virtual network and security on top of a virtual network with a virtual team that truly are all home-based and they're all bring your own device type of. That's the current state of the small team that we have. So I'd be curious to know kind of your approach on how to establish a proper virtual network and what that might look like.
Sure, I'll jump in first. This is Bill Townsend again. So one of the things that we talked about earlier was multi-factor authentication. So when you think about the fact that you're working in this geographically diverse environment where you have non-company owned devices, if you're not providing some additional layer of authentication of proving who you are to gain access to those company files, and even setting up policies within Office 365 that says, this is coming from a trusted computer, therefore you can download the file versus only opening the file inside of the Office 365 ecosphere, those are some of the things where data, files, proprietary information can walk away. In addition to that, there's additional layers of licensing and security you can get from Microsoft's 365 product line, where you can add some additional, what's the word I'm looking for, identity protection, if you will, or encryption to those files so that they have to prove who they are when they open them, so that you get a better sense of security around the confidentiality of your documents and your services and things of that nature.
I think the other thing that I would throw in there, Bill, is that for the most part now, if you're in a Windows environment, you want to make sure that you have encryption at rest taken care of for those remote computers. And BitLocker is readily available for all of those computers. And so that if somebody were to put data onto those bring your own device computers, you would want to make sure that it's secure. We did see that more with laptops where they're traveling through airports and it'll disappear. But you want to make sure that if somebody were to get to that computer, that generally you think, well, they don't have my credentials, but they can take that hard drive, pull it out and attach it to another computer, and then they've got your data. If you have encryption on those computers, on those hard drives, then when they plug in, they're not going to get any data. And so usually you've got physical security around an office where if you've got a brick and mortar, but when you're spread out like that, you like to make sure that that data is very secure, because you don't want you to have a declaration that you'd had a breach of some kind.
Thanks, Brett and Bill. Would you guys agree, though? I know that it can be tough, but in a startup environment, but employee-owned laptops, bring your own device versus company-owned equipment. The company-owned equipment is a more secure environment.
Well, you can establish more policies around it. I think if I can use Optimum as an example, our policy is if somebody's working from home and they don't have their Optimum computer, then they are not allowed to access the company network with that other than via a terminal or a Citrix environment. And so that's the only way that they can get to the data, because it all resides here on our LAN. And so if you're doing that, it's just more peace of mind because you are working on a company asset, but you also like to defer those costs and spread those out at times. And especially in a startup, you want to be as economical as possible. You just got to take the proper steps. And I think encryption requiring that, even though you don't own the asset, you want to make sure that your data is safe if it ends up on somebody else's computer.
Very good. Thank you, Brett. Bill, did you want to add anything?
I was going to say this goes back to the last slide that Brett spoke to, which is policies. So if you don't have good, secure policies, it doesn't matter if it's a corporate asset or a personal asset. If people aren't following policies and they don't understand what is and is not acceptable, that's where a large amount of the risk comes from.
Yep.
Great. Any other questions?
I actually have a question, and I'm thinking it might have been partially just answered, but we have a lot of people who work remotely and they do have company computers and they don't really necessarily like remote into the office, but I am here, mostly I'm primarily here every day. I was sick a couple times and then I had to work from home. So I remoted into my work computer through the VPN. And I worked on my personal computer, kind of like mirroring the screen in the office, and I was able to like access everything that I can when I'm here. How is my work computer then affected by anything that's happening on my personal computer, if at all? If that makes sense.
Yes, it does make sense. So the fact that your company allows you to use your personal computer to connect a VPN client into the company network isn't necessarily a bad thing, depending on how the policies are applied. But what it does do is it exposes your computer, which you're allowed to connect to anything that may be impacting your computer at home. So if, to Brett's point earlier, if there's not some type of a mandate that says you have to have solid antivirus on your computer at home, and then we, through the next gen firewalls, aren't checking to make sure the antivirus is running, then we as a company would have a risk that your computer is infected and therefore being able to impact and affect the company network. So that's where you have to have, kind of a layered approach back to what we were talking about earlier that says, yes, we're trying to make sure that you can work from home, especially in today's climate, but we need certain guarantees and ways to verify that it is secure. So that's where some of the additional policies would come into play and additional tools to trust but verify, if you will.
Amen. Good job, Bill. I think that goes back to Mike's question. You want to make sure that you have, as a business, a good policy that states if you're going to use a personal device, antivirus must be deployed, and encryption, we talked about that one, and your firewall must always be in use on the local computer. So I think that, Nicole, if you're going to be accessing your work computer through a VPN, you still should have a firewall turned on your home computer. And then I would ask your IT folks at the office, are you blocking me from only allowing me to access my computer when I get in? There's a network policies that say, if Nicole connects, we're only going to allow her to get to this computer and no place else, so that she can't be a jump off point once she hits the network to talk to everything else on the network. So it's good to be more secure than less secure in those kinds of situations where you're accessing with a home computer. But I like what they're doing. They're allowing you to get in with a VPN. That's good. The second thing is that they're allowing you to get to your computer and just do remote control of that and not use your home computer for doing things. So I think they're on the right track there for sure.
Does that help,
great.
Nicole?
Okay, thank you so much.
Right.
It does, and just connected to that, does it work the other way as well? Like, let's say, even though we have a great security for the local computers in the office, if, God forbid, something would happen with that and I would be connected from my home computer at the same time, would that affect my home computer?
Well, and
Let's
that's
say
where
I don't have sorry.
I was going to say that's where that home computer should have a firewall turned on and should also have antivirus enabled on it as well. That you have to do that protection yourself, right? So I think that's a big piece of the equation.
And what Brett was saying about that two-way street, because once you connect that VPN, you've opened a hole where your network at home connects to your network at work. Therefore, if there's not a policy that controls the flow of the data or the traffic between the 2 points, then yes, you could be exposing your computer and your home network to something that's creeping and crawling through the corporate network.
Yeah. Great question, Nicole.
Yeah, I definitely need to up my personal protection, I guess.
Always, and that's, you want to update and upgrade your protection to the point where it doesn't prevent you from actually doing your job. But keeping that balance is so critical and something to keep in mind, and something certainly to ask for help about. So, well, we're wrapping up here. We have we're just close to at the 1:30 mark. I just wanted to thank everybody, because I know oftentimes our time is the most valuable thing that we have to give, and I hope that this was valuable, and you all have taken some stuff away from this. And if we can prevent one more attack just by raising awareness or helping you with some tools, we did our jobs today. So thank you again for coming. Keep an eye open for the slide deck for this event, and also for the invite for the Microsoft 365 security, Microsoft 365 productivity workshop that's going to be coming up in February. And if we didn't get a chance to answer your question and you do have questions, feel free to send that to me. I'll share it with Brett and or Bill, and we'll get an answer back out to you. So thank you again. Hope you all enjoyed lunch. I realized I didn't introduce myself. I'm Jonathan DeFez. I do business development here at Optimum Networking. I'm quite honored to work amongst these giants of engineering and wisdom. I get a chance to talk to Bill and Brett and our other engineers like that every day. So thank you again. And again, keep in touch if you have any questions. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.